Hi, I'm Debbie. Thank you for joining me today. We are going to be painting this tropical sunset design. I kept this one very simple and basic for my beginner painters. So I'll walk you through every step, and all of the supplies you'll need are in the description box below. So please join me. So let's start in by drawing in the horizon line. So we want to do it lower than half. You never want to design something right in the middle. So we're going to go, if that's halfway, let's go really low because we want most of this to be the sky. So just make sure you got that nice and straight. And we can sketch in a little, we're going to have a little bit of land down there. And that's all we need for this one. So we've got our colors, we've got our magenta, primary colors, magenta, blue, yellow, and white. So we're going to start off with the top of the sky. We're going to take a scoop of blue, a little bit of magenta. We're going to make a pretty purple shade. That's a little more blue. Let's take a little more magenta. And we don't want to go quite that dark, that's going to be really dark. So let's take a little white and just mix it into the edge, so that'll really help us see how much blue or magenta we have in that color. And you can see there's a lot more blue than magenta, so let's take a little more magenta. We want to get more of a purple shade. Mix all that up. You can also see it by, if you're using a palette like this with the waxy palette paper, you can sort of spread it out, and so some of that white shows through. That can kind of help you see also exactly what shade you're at. I want to make it a little more purple. Let's put a little more magenta in there. And that's still pretty dark. Let's take a little bit of white. And now we've got it a little too light, but it's okay. Just mix some more magenta, a little more blue. We'll get there. That looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm gonna dip my brush in the water and stir that water in there just to make it flow a little easier on the canvas. Make sure you get all your edges if you're painting on a gallery wrapped canvas like this one. See the edges? You want to get all those edges painted. So then you can hang it on the wall without a frame if you want. Okay, so let's go down about a third of the way. Just get that all on there real quick. Add a little more water so it flows better. Now we're going to blend as we go. So I'm going to take a little bit more white, and I'm just going to mix it into the edge of that color because I don't want to lose all of that dark color in case I need some. And that is a little too washed out for me. I want to make it a little more intense. Put a little more blue, a little more magenta. Let's do a little more magenta. I want to go with more of a purpley sky, not so blue. And we're just going to add some of this color right at the bottom of the dark color. So you want to move kind of quick, so we're blending wet into wet. And you're just going to drag that brush right along the bottom edge of the dark color, and then you're just lightly going to drag your brush halfway over each of those shades, and you're just going to go back and forth, long brush strokes until they slowly just sort of blend right into each other. And just go left to right, all the way across, all the way across. I'll put a little more water on my brush, and I'm going to go down a little further. And now I want to get even lighter. And just make sure it's a nice smooth blend to get your sides. I'm going to take a little white. And again, I'm going to blend it right onto the edge. I'm going to take a little more magenta. I'm going to swipe a little bit of that purple color. So I'm going a little lighter. Yeah, that's pretty. Add a little more white in there. And again, right along that bottom wet edge. Just going to paint right on top of that bottom edge. Add a little more water to my paint. And again, just long brush strokes. Back and forth. If you do little swipes like this, you're not going to get a smooth blend. So you want to do long, long, long brush strokes back and forth. While the paint's still wet, but you'll get a nice smooth blend. Bring a little more of that light color in there. And I want to get a little lighter. I think I'm going to put a little more white on there. A little more magenta. I want like a light lavender color. Yeah. And again, back and forth. I'm not even cleaning off my brush in between. You can, but if you don't clean it off in between, sometimes that helps blend it better. If you have a lot of that dark on your brush, that can also darken up your lighter color too much. So you'll start to get a feel for how much paint's on your brush and whether you need to clean it or not. I'm just going to drag it up a little higher. And you don't have to have a perfectly smooth blend, it's up to you. If you want it really, really smooth, then you just gotta keep doing this technique until you don't see any streaks or lines. But when I'm doing a sky, sometimes I like some other streaks in there. It just adds to the sunset look. If there's little bits, different shades streaked in there. Okay, now we're gonna go much lighter. We're going to clean off our brush now. And we're going to do kind of a light pinky shade. So let's take more white right under the edge there and more magenta. And we're going to blend a little bit of that light purple color. And then we'll drag that along that wet edge on the bottom. So we're not all the way down to the bottom yet. We want to save about that much because we're going to bring in some really pretty oranges and warm golden colors right where the sun's setting. So you could add a few streaks of this color up into the purple if you want. It'll start to give that sunset look. Just keep those streaks pretty horizontal. They can curve a little bit if you want, but you don't want them to be going different directions. Or it won't really look like a sunset. Okay, clean your brush off really well. I want to get even lighter here, so I'm going to take more white, just a little bit of magenta. And that's a little too light for what I'm going for. I'm going to take a tiny bit of yellow too. Make kind of a coral peachy color. Yeah, ooh, I like that. So let's do a few swipes of that right on top of that light pinky color, or the lavender. And just doing some streaks. Right on top of that. Maybe even bring a few up a little higher. And you don't have to blend these in completely. It'll look more like a layers and layers of sunset if you don't blend it in completely. Okay, let's bring in some warm tones. So let's take a scoop of yellow, a little bit of magenta, and make an orange. Let's see here. That's way too intense, so let's put a little bit of white. A little more magenta. A little more white. A little more yellow. So I want it to be a deep, bright coral color. A little more magenta. I want a little more pinky. Okay, let's see. That'll work for now. So we're going to lightly blend this into the bottom edge of the wet color we had there. You need to get your brush a little wet. You can do that. And we're going to go almost down to that horizon line, the water line. I'm going to put a little more white into some of that so it's a little bit more faded color. And I'm going to streak that right on the top parts of this color so that transitions a little bit smoother from this color to that color. And I'm just doing some horizontal streaks really lightly to kind of blend the two together. And you can do a few streaks up in here in this color. And I'll just start to give it that sunset look more so. We'll put a little more white into some of that. And just drag a little in here and there. And you don't want to start lifting off your other colors, so just be careful with that. If it starts to lift off, then just add a little more paint. That just means you don't have enough paint on your brush and your brush is scooping away the colors that are there. I'm going to have these kind of swoop up a little bit in this direction, so I'm going to add some more streaks kind of coming in at an angle like this. Just going to add a little more interest to the sky. Again, just doing little streaks with the brush, implying that these are clouds. Okay, and I want to bring in a little more of a pinky tone, so I'm going to add some more white and a tiny bit of magenta, so I get more of a pinky color. And I'm just going to add a little bit of pinky tone. And just lightly dragging that into the sky. And just smudges. I want to keep it pretty low though, so I don't want to get too high up there. I want it to be all the drama is sort of down low. let's get some intense sunlight happening in there. We're gonna take a scoop of white and a little bit of yellow. We're gonna do a light yellow. More white. And do a very light yellow. And let's just do a little smudge. That's where the sun's going to be. A little bit, again, off center. So not right perfectly in the middle. Go a little bit to the left. And we're just going to do like a little smudge, sort of a circle. And then we're just going to spread out. I'm using my 5/8 angular brush. And then I'm just going to spread out. I do little streaks. I'll put a little water on my brush. Tiny bit of water. And I'm just spreading out little streaks. Thin it out with water. That'll help blend it out a little better. And then let's do a little streak up here with some of this yellow. Curve up a little bit, following the shape of those other ones. And maybe just a few little streaks here. And this doesn't have to be exactly like mine. Sunsets all have different shades or different patterns and okay, let's see. Let's take a little more of the orangey color. That peachy orange. Here, let's bring a little bit of that. So this is a little bit brighter orange. And I'm going to just bring a little bit of that in around where the sun's going to go. Just lightly fade that out. You want it to get nice and bright. Kind of covering up where the sun was, but we'll bring it back in a second. Let's go a little more intense orange. A little more magenta, a little more yellow. Streaking that out. And my brush. And take a little bit of that pure yellow and just smudge that around, kind of implying that there's a little circle there, but take a little of that yellow and streak it in here too. Okay, clean it off my brush. And I'm going to take a purple color. So let's go back to that original purple. And we're going to do a line right along the water line. We're using the darkest part of the sky, that color, if you still have some of that. And we're going to do a little ledge, a little line right where the water line is. So right above the pencil line. Just do a thin line, and then we're going to take a little bit of a purpley shade, kind of more magenta, lighter than that dark color, but with a little more magenta mixed in, and we're going to go right above that. Just do another little stripe right above that. And then clean off your brush, and we're going to blend that in a little bit. I'm going to use my number 8 filbert brush. Just with a damp brush, I'm just sort of going to blend that into the background sky. So it's not such a harsh line. You know what, I'm going to switch brushes. I'm going to use the 5/8 angular again. And we're going to put a little bit of that magenta, the mix with magenta, blue, and white. So it's like a more reddish purple. And we're just gonna do a little stripe above the dark. And we want it to blend into that orange color. So I've thinned it out quite a bit, so it's very watered down. And I'm just kind of blending that so it fades up into the orangey color. And it can be kind of streaky if it is, don't worry. We just want to blend right up into that. We can fix this again later if you covered up your sun like I just did. If you want to add a few streaks up in these colors with that purpley, like that. Just looks like more layers of the sunset. Throw a couple up here if you want. No right or wrong with sunsets. A light yellow. I'm going to go a little lighter than I did before. And I'm going to go right over. I just want barely any paint on my brush. And go right in the center of where I did those yellow streaks before. This is just going to make the yellow a little more intense and more glowing by doing a lighter shade right on top of it. And you don't want to cover up the whole thing, just kind of right in the center of where you had those streaks of yellow. Just add a layer right on top of it. Bring a little down here. Now be careful, because when you're mixing orange and purple, it could start to look muddy and brown. So if it's starting to look muddy, just take a break, let it dry a little bit. Okay, let's just add a few more streaks. And again, if yours is looking different than mine and you're doing something different that you like even better, then go for it. Just do what looks good to you. Get a little brighter right where that sun was. Just fading that back a little. I want to bring up a little bit of lighter streaks in there. So I'm going to take that, like the more pinky coral color. So I'm taking some white, a little bit of magenta, and a little bit of yellow. And I'm just going to bring in some streaks. And I have mine pretty watered down, so it's not going to be real solid. This way it'll blend easier. Whoa, that's too bright. Tone it down a little bit. So mine's really wet. It's a little too wet, so I'm going to take a dry brush and just blend it into the background a little more. Just fading it up. there's a certain color that you like more than others, and you want to bring more of that color in, go for it. You don't have to do it just like this. I just want some more of this lighter pinky tone brought in. God, Poet, you're so loud. Can you hear him snorting in the background? He's like a pig. Half pig, half dog. Okay, let's see. Get a little bit lighter up here. I want some more of that peachy color, so I'm going to take some more of the yellow. And I'm switching back and forth with brushes. Now I'm using my 1-inch wash. Use whichever brush you are the most comfortable with. With sunsets, you don't need a specific brush, but it's whatever works best for you. So I'm using the flat tip of the brush, the edge of the brush. I'm just going to streak in some more of the orange down low here. Just to get it a little more vibrant. Down on the bottom half here, or the bottom section. Especially right near where the sun's gonna be. Get real vibrant, bright orange. Right near that area. Filbert again, the number 8 filbert, that smaller brush. And I'm going to brighten up this sun again. So I'm going to take a little yellow and a little bit of white. And I'm just going to smudge kind of a circle, but more of just a smeary implied circle. I'm going to put a little more white on my brush now. And I'm just going to smudge in a not so perfect sun there. Spread out a few areas. Doesn't look like a perfect circle. Okay, we're gonna let this dry a little more before we add the clouds up there. We'll take a little break from that for now, and let's get to the water. So the water, we're going to be bringing in some of the colors that are up in the sky. So let's start with a smudge of magenta, a little blue, but we want it to be a little more, well, not so intense, a little more, let's get some more white. Take some white. Let's see, that's a little too blue. Let's take a little more magenta. More white. We want the sky to be a little more vibrant than the actual water. So let's just start with that. Okay, so let's do a fat swipe of that color along the top of the water. And if you're worried about getting that line, not getting the line really straight, you can always take a piece of painter's tape, like this blue tape is great, and you could line it out, but you want to make sure this is really dry, so you don't have to wait for this to be really dry, and then just set that and you can make your line nice and straight. But I'm just going to eyeball it. Okay, so that's what we're going to start with, and then let's get some white and a little more magenta. We're gonna go with more of this mauve-y kind of color. Add a little bit of water to your paint, and then let's go, just go all the way down. We're gonna add details later. Let's take a little bit of magenta, mix it into that, some of that color we just used, and a little bit of yellow. Whoa, I did a lot. I didn't mean to do that much. Do more magenta. I'm gonna do kind of a coral color again, but it's got a little bit of the purpley color mixed in, so it's muted down. Okay, that'll be good. And we're just gonna do streaks across the water. A little bit of this color mixed in. And just holding your brush flat and horizontal, using the very, very tip of the brush so you get nice skinny lines. And you're just gonna streak from left to right. Try to make these as skinny as you can. We're just gonna add lots of streaks and layers in the water. Do little short ones, long ones. Keep them as horizontal as you can. You want them to be as flat as possible so the water doesn't look like there's big giant waves. Okay, that's good. So now clean off your brush. I'm gonna go back in here and blend. I'm gonna let this dry a little bit. I'm gonna blend that section a little more because that line is a little too intense for me. So I want this to be more of a gradual blending. So I'm gonna take a little bit of that darker purple color and I'm gonna wet that edge again. Just gonna go right over that line where I did it the first time. And you can just avoid the area where the sun is. I'm going to take a more magenta mixed into that color. So it's a little bit of a, oh, that's too intense. A little bit of white in it. And right along the top of that wet edge, I'm going to add a little bit of this. And then I'm going to take a clean dry brush, dry it off really well, and I'm just gonna light, so it's just barely damp. I'm just gonna fade it up into that orangey color, or whatever color you have next up there. I'm just lightly with my brush, kind of fading it up into there. Just dragging my brush right over the top edge. That's wet. Not pushing down hard, I'm just barely dragging my brush right over the top of it so it's more of a fade. Go ignore that. It's okay if you cover up some of your details. You can always go back in later and brighten up some of those spots if we need to. I'm just dragging my brush, a damp brush, right over that harsh line where the water meets the sky, just to fade it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be such a strong edge. So I have a damp brush, just blending a little bit of that back a little. Well, so you want to try not to drip. See, I just dripped right there, and now if I wipe it away, it's going to take away the paint that was under it. So try not to do that, but it's okay, I'll fix that later. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll just have to add more paint on top of it. Okay, see how I kind of ended up ended up covering up some of my bright spots there. That's okay, we'll just have to bring it back. And a little more of that lighter mauve color to soften up this darkness here. Okay, now I need to bring in more of the orangey color. But again, you want to make sure when you're mixing orange with purple, those colors are opposites, which means you blend those together and you're going to get a dirty brown shade. We don't want dirt, we don't want it to look like smog. So let's take the filbert brush again, the smaller brush. I'm going to make a orangey coral color. Actually, this is more magenta. A little bit of white. I'm just going to spread that a little more magenta. Swipes of this right around the sun. Cleaning off my brush, drying it off so it's just barely damp, and just with a lightly damp brush, fading that out. Blending it off. My sun got messed up, so we're going to have to bring that back. There's lots of back and forth sometimes with painting, but that's okay. Take some yellow, bring that little sun back in. Just fade that out, make a little smudge. Actually kind of cool leaving it just like that too. I'm going to blend it out a little bit. Do it in layers, just brighten it up a little bit, fade it out. I'm just doing little lines, dragging little lines through it to kind of streak it out. Let's take a little bit of this and bring it up in here. Brighten up some of those yellows. Putting a little bit of peachy in the yellow so it's not so bright yellow. Put a little bit of water on my brush so it's smoother and easier to blend. And let's just drag a little bit of this back in here. Just kind of zigzagging a little bit of that yellow down towards the sun. I'm just fading this out a little bit. I don't like it to look so zigzaggy. I'm going to blend this out a little bit. I just have a damp brush, I'm just sort of feathering it out so it just sort of softly blends into the background. I want just a little more white in here. The damp brush and just fading it out. It was a little too wet. Okay. I think that's good for now. Just taking a little bit of white Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of a purpley shade. Let's take a little blue, a little magenta, and a little bit of white. Let's see here. A little more white, a little more magenta. We're going for a warm lavender color. So let's take a little more magenta and a little more blue, which I had right there. I just mixed that in. We want to go a little darker than that. Take a little more blue. Let's see if it's a little darker. That is a little darker. We're going to add some little streaks. Not as many as we did with that mauve color. A little bit less, and these are just going to be little tiny skinny streaks, little small lines, some short, some long. And these are just implying little shadows in the water, little ripples. You might want to water it down a little bit if it's not keeping it nice and flowy for you. Use just the tip of the brush. I'm using the 5/8 angular brush because it's got that really skinny flat point to it. So I'm just using the tip of the brush, keeping it very skinny. All these little streaks are very, very skinny. And just be patient. You need lots of these lines. Make sure you have a variety, like little short ones, some longer ones. They can overlap a little bit, but keeping them stacked, like straight across. Don't have them any crisscross. When I say overlap, I mean like overlapping this way, not like across. If that makes sense, hopefully it makes sense. And you don't want it to look like stripes. That's why you want little lines. Lots and lots and lots of little lines. You want a lot of this, so it's almost covering up everything. But thinned out enough where you still see those other colors coming through. Let's take magenta. Let's try a little bit of yellow and some white. More white and a little more magenta. Whoops, I did a lot. So it's going to be a pinky coral shade. I'm going to clean off my brush because I have so much paint on it right now. Dry your brush off. And then you're going to put a little bit of that color on there. And we're going to be coming down. We're going to focus pretty much in the center. Go below where that shadow color was, where the darker part of the water was. Right below that. And we're just going to do little streaks again. Some long, some short. Just a little bit on your brush and use the very tip of the brush. And we're just doing little streaks and you're coming down here as if all this brightness here is shining down on the water. So little streaks, keep them horizontal. And you don't want to be perfectly straight edges. They can come out a little bit here and there. Some could be longer, some could be shorter. Keep them horizontal. And keep those nice and horizontal. With the brightest part being right below where the sun is. I'm going to add a little bit more of this color up into the sky. Just so, just going to do some little smudges. Just so we have some more of that color. So it's the exact same color. And I'm going to use the side of my brush and I'm just going to smudge the edge of my brush. It's kind of watered down. And I'm just going to start adding a little more cloud. You don't want to do like a poofy cartoon cloud. You just want a little bit of a smudge and then fading off. You'll get kind of random shapes if you use the side of the brush. And they won't be so perfect, which is how you want it to be. Okay, I'm going to add a little more of this color down here. And you can do a little bit of this over on these sides too. Just keep the main focus right below where the sun is. And again, if you have a little bit of water mixed in with that and it's thinned out, then it won't show up when it dries, it won't be as intense. So I suggest adding a little bit of water when you do the areas over here, and keep the more pure paint with less water right in the foreground here, so it's a little brighter. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of lighter, so I'm going to take a little bit of white and a teeny bit of yellow. A little more white. And let's go right below the sun. We're going to do some little streaks. Just on top of all the areas that you just did. Keeping it directly below where the sun was. Little short horizontal lines. And not all the perfectly exact same length. Some can be a little shorter, some can be a little longer. Let's go a little brighter even. A little more white, a little more yellow. And now even less of that bright color right below where the sun is. Keep it horizontal. I need to add a little more detail. This feels like just a thick stripe right there, so I'm going to make a little bit of a deeper shade of purple than that back color was. A little blue, a little magenta, just a teeny bit of white. Ooh, that's too blue. More magenta. Let's see here. Yeah, and just do some streaks. Just to give it a little, well, that's still kind of blue. Just a little bit of detail back there. Just some little streaks. Now we're going to do some clouds, bigger clouds up here. So I will take if you have a messed up 5/8 angular brush. This one's kind of smashed. We're going to really smudge it around. So we're going to do just like we did here. we're going to do just a big one here. So let's take a little bit of, we're going to do like a coral color. Let's take some magenta, some yellow, and we'll start with that. I think that'll work. Yeah, that'll work. You just want a little bit on your brush. And we're going to flatten the brush, and we're just going to kind of smudge the brush around. I don't want much paint on my brush. I'm wiping off most of it. I'm just going to kind of smudge around. I'm going to have it kind of scoop down. See, I'm getting some texture by using the flat part of the brush. I'm just getting some random texture. And I'm not making it solid. I'm barely using any paint, so that sky is popping through. See how it looks kind of patchy? That's what we want. Just let the brush do the work for you. Let's do another little, maybe a little one underneath it. And just smudging that around a little. And we're gonna have a palm tree right here. So that's gonna cover up some of this cloud, but we'll just start with a little bit there. And then we're gonna take a little bit of white and a little bit of yellow. So we're doing a lighter coral color, very light. And we're gonna add just the same technique, just on the bottom part. So the light is shining up on the bottom part of it. So use the side of your brush. I'm just lightly smudging along the bottom edge of the cloud, creating a little bit of texture. Again, right on the bottom edge of this one. Barely any paint on my brush. So I just want the underside kind of hitting. Let's put a little more yellow. I'm just using a little bit of paint, just tapping on the bottom edge. There's the bottom. A little more of that coral color. Do a little more of that coral color, pinky. A little more pink. Again, just using the flat side of the brush. Smudge it around. And let's see, that might be it for now. I don't know, I might go back and let that dry a little bit. All right, let's bring in some black. I'm just gonna put a little bit of black. I don't want much, I don't want it to be completely black. I'm gonna do a dark purple. So let's take a scoop of magenta, a scoop of blue, and make a dark purple, and just put a teeny bit. Black goes a long way. Just a teeny bit of black in there. Let's do a little more magenta. So it should be really dark, but let's see here. Yeah, that'll probably work. Maybe a little more magenta. And let's paint. I'm gonna add a little bit of water to that so it flows better. Let's do this bottom here. This is gonna be our, and need a little more black. It's gonna be our land. Okay, so for the palm tree, I'm going to use a nice, good, not messed up 5/8 angular brush. get your brush wet, put a little bit of water in your black purple mixture. It's going to be easier to paint if there's a little bit of water mixed in and it's got more of a thin texture, thin consistency to it. It'll be much easier to create these palm leaves. So we don't want to cover up our sun, so let's have the palm tree kind of come up and maybe like curve up a little bit like this. So we're just going to come up from the side. Make sure this is really dry in case you mess up and you need to wipe away mistakes. So let's come up like this. It can get a little thicker at the base, but overall the palm tree stays pretty much the same thickness from bottom to top. What I always like to explain when I'm teaching how to do palm trees, do a little dot, just so you know that's going to be your starting point. And then we're going to create the main palm leaves, like the spine of the palm leaf. Use the very tip of your brush. And you're going to start with just a few, maybe like 1, 2, 3, have one coming up, you can have one curving, maybe have one kind of curving off to the side. And you want to have some that are kind of hanging down like that. Maybe another one over there. So that's your base. Now, I like using the 5/8 angular brush. You could use a little tiny brush for every little palm leaf, but I would say use this brush. So what you're going to do is smash your brush down so you don't have too much paint on your brush. You might want to start with just a clean, fresh brush to get all the paint out of the brush. Make sure there's some water mixed into the paint, and then you're just going to put a little bit of paint on your brush. You're going to use the very tip of the brush, and you're going to start at the main line here, and you're just going to fling little tiny lines from the base of this line. They're going to come off like that. You want to make sure you end with a point. So some of these you're only going to see half of the palm leaf. Some of them you might see both sides. Like this one up here, maybe I'll see leaves on this side. Make sure you end with a point, meaning it's just going to go straight out. And then maybe I'll do some coming on this side too. See what I mean? That one you see both sides. This one is maybe just see half of it. Make sure they're all about the same length. And these leaves, the individual leaves, are also the same length. You don't want to have some way longer, some shorter. That'll look weird. And if you flick your brush, you'll get a nice point to the tip of it, on the end of it. Rather than sometimes it helps if you practice on your palette, just practice using the very tip of the brush and get a nice skinny end to it. If you go like this and you smash down, and you're going to get a fat end to it. If you lift off, you'll get more of a, see if you flick it, you'll get more of a point on the end of it. So push down and flick off. So practice on your palette a bunch first if you're nervous at all, before you go right to your painting. But this brush is perfect for getting this look. I'm just pushing down and lifting off. I'm going to do some on this side too. Let's do some on this side. And I have some go in this direction, and I have some go in that direction. That's going to be like, if you could see the other side of the leaf, they might be hanging in a different direction. And these on this side of the leaf may be coming down like that. maybe have it a little more solid, more overlap at the base of the tree trunk, or the top of the trunk there, so it looks more realistic. Like there's such a bunch of them that you can't see through. So this one is way longer, and that looks funny. So I'm going to extend this one up a little bit too. They match. Okay, then just kind of look back, decide where you might need another one. Maybe there's another one peeking through here. And you don't always see both sides. Like I was saying, sometimes you just see half of one. Sometimes you might just see just a skinny little section of one, because you can't see the whole thing. So you might just be seeing an angle of one. So maybe you just see parts of one, but not the whole thing. And if it's a little too see-through in parts, just add some more layers so it's a little more solid. Okay. This looks too even. So I'm going to add another one hanging down here. Make sure you have enough water so you can get that nice flow to your paint. I want to see a clearer line where the water edge is. So let's take a little bit of white and let's do a light periwinkle color. Just take some blue, some magenta, a little more magenta than blue, and mix it into the white. I just want a lighter shade. Let's see how this looks. A little more magenta. I want more of a pinky magenta or mauve shade. And I'm just going to go right along the edge of the water. And then let's see. I'm going to put a little more white. Watering it down. I'm just adding a little bit of brightness in the yellow again. It's a teeny bit. I'm going to clean off my brush so it's just damp. Sort of blend that into some of those areas just to brighten them up a little bit. So I've got a very watered down, barely any paint on my brush. Tiny bit of white. It's not going to show up intense bright white because it's watered down. I'm just going to drag this on a couple little areas just to brighten them up a little bit. If it's too bright, just take your brush, dry it off, and fade it back with a barely damp brush. Looks bright right now, but it'll fade out when it dries. Okay, then let's add a little bit. I'm going to take my messed up brush. You can even take your filbert if you have the messed up filbert. And we just want to brighten up the bottom of the clouds a little. So I'm going to take a little bit of white, teeny bit of yellow. I'm just gonna, whoa, that's really intense. Maybe not that much. Let's do more yellow. And I'm wiping off most of my brush. Let me take a little bit of magenta just to tone it down. So yellow Tiny bit of magenta, a little bit of white. I just want to bring it in a little bit onto the bottoms of the clouds. That's a little too orange. Take a little more magenta, a little bit of white, more magenta. I want it more pinky. Magenta, white. Okay, there's more pink there. So just smudging it into the very bottom edges of these clouds here. I have barely any paint on my brush. And I'm just going to smudge it into the bottom edges of the clouds. Tiny bit of white. I'm just going to lighten up a little bit on the bottom. I'm just smearing it so it's blending in. Barely any paint. Just hitting the very bottoms. Oh, Poet, you stink. Gross. I can smell you from here. You're so nasty. So that's making them a little more intense, which is what those needed. So I have just a little white. There's a tiny bit of yellow mixed in there too. And just fading it out. Just smudging it around until it blends in. I'm gonna clean off my brush, dry it off so it's just barely damp. And I'm just gonna blend this in. So you see it popping out from behind the palm tree, but that's okay. Oops. Dry my brush, clean it off. Just gonna smudge that into. It's gonna dry more faint than this. It's very watered down. Just smear and smudge in the brush around. A little more of a pinky. And white. You don't want to work it too much. It's starting to get a little too much here. I just want just a little hint. Most of the paint off my brush. And I just want to drag a little more of this across the cloud. Sometimes you can do too much. You just gotta know when to stop. And honestly, I don't always know when to stop. So right now, I don't like it. That's okay, we'll fix it. white on the bottom. Smear it in. Stand back and take a look. So I want just a little bit more of that bright yellowy color, like some of these yellows down here. Just a little bit brought right up in here. I'm just tapping a little bit right on the bottom edges of some of these spots. I'm going to go right over the top of this and then just bring the palm leaves back in. I feel like there should be some peeking out. The cloud should be peeking out from behind the tree. So let's just go right over this. Okay. Yeah, bring all this. Little bit of a glow right along the top of the water and just fade that out. Take my brush and fade that out. Bit of white. Right in the center of the sun. Smudge it out a little bit. A little bit of bright yellow and white. is bring in a little island. Let's take more of that dark purple and black mix. And we're going to put a little island right a little bit in front of the sun. Overlapping the sun just a little bit. And we're going to add just a teeny tiny bit of white, just to make it a little more faint. Because it's in the distance, it's not going to be as dark as this color. So you're just going to fade it back a little bit by adding a tiny bit of white. Not much, but let's add one more over here. Kind of popping out from behind the pouches.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it. Take care. Bye.
You're gonna bring it all the way downstairs?